Well, hello everyone, I am Fracture, and I thought I'd introduce you to Two Worlds 2. I just picked it up on Steam, and I thought I'd show you around sort of the gameplay and how it's set up, that sort of thing. It's not really going to be a let's play, but I thought you might want to see how the game looks. Apparently, Two Worlds 2 is actually Two Worlds with the graphics redone and probably some new adventures and that sort of thing, but it's not a brand new game. It looks really good, as you can see. I mean, it's the graphics are pretty sharp, but as you're playing it, it does have sort of a vintage game feel. So even though they've redone the graphics, you do get that feel that it's an older game. That's not necessarily bad. I like vintage games. We'll be starting actually past the tutorial, but I'll just show you what a new game start looks like. You get to choose your difficulty level and your appearance. You have to be a male, but you can tune quite extensively what the guy looks like. And this is the guy that I'm playing at the moment, just past the tutorial, as I said. You don't choose any starting stats. They're sort of built upon as you play the game. You get skill points and you add to the basic character as you go. So let's continue this game. And as I said, what I've done is I've played through sort of the tutorial. And as you play through the tutorial, what it does is gives you attribute points, gives you skills points, and I haven't spent any. This is sort of my start off position so that I can try different characters. I just reload this save and then I build from here. So I'll just go through what sort of stats that you can assign. And my cold is coming back. Just 1 minute, please. Okay, so you'll be familiar with most of this typical RPG stuff. Endurance, that's your health and your carrying capacity. Strength, melee damage. Accuracy, that's purely ranged weapons. And willpower is magic. And from the little I've played, it really does look like you can more or less just load up whatever type of character you're playing. Like a mage, you pretty much put all of your points here. Although as I've played it for a little bit, it seems to help to throw a few in here. So you let your endurance creep up, but put all your points into magic, for example. Now each of your skill types, we have basic skills, which are sort of just the skills of a person. Your resilience, how fast you regenerate health, how resistant to elements you are, how resistant to poison, how resistant to physical damage, and your level of stamina. Stamina, as far as I can tell, is just sprinting. It doesn't seem to be affected by the weapons you're using, but of course at the beginning of the game you don't use really heavy weapons or heavy armor, so that might actually change as the game progresses. These are your three main character types: warrior, ranger, and mage. There is a rogue, or well, they call it assassin, but there's your rogue skills. I've played the game a little bit, and you can't just put all your points into assassin. You can't just build these skills up. You're not going to do very well. Assassin skills really have to be played against one of these other main character types. And then we've got crafting, and again, as I said, just generic. So warrior skills have things like defensive abilities, dirty trick, which is blind. That's more like a monk skill to me, but you can use these and they recharge over time. Defensive thrust, so basically just various skills. And you can assign skill points to them. Now, until you find a skill book to light up a particular skill, you cannot assign a skill point to it. So I can't give myself, in this case, defensive thrust, use your shield or polearm to knock back an enemy. I can't assign a skill point to that because I haven't found a skill book. Now you can buy those from vendors apparently, or just find them as drops or in the environment. There's fire strike, so you can use a torch as a weapon, and pretty standard stuff. Shield pull, that's actually kind of an interesting one. You can use your axe to pull the shield away from another character. Block breaker, there's a blocking sort of game. Right click to block, left click to attack. when they're blocking, they can be hard to hit, and you have a skill that lets you overwhelm them so you can get some hits in. Battle Cry, that's pretty typical, reduces their abilities. Humbling Blow, knock the enemy to the ground. Retribution, that's basically a riposte. And Thrust Strike, that is, let's see, Powerful Thrust with a damage bonus, 20% damage bonus at the first level. So that's your warrior skill set. Ranger skills, multi-arrow, which is what it sounds like, shoots 2 arrows. They're not targeted, they just fan out in front of you. Then you have Steady Hand, which actually lets you target them. You can't target stuff beside you, they all have to be pretty close together. I found this somewhat useful, but the mechanic is a little awkward. So I think this isn't as good as it sounds, although you can have like 10 levels of multi-arrow, probably to give yourself 10 arrows, and then be able to target 10. That's just a guess, I haven't played that far. Target 10 different people and have each arrow hit the target. In practice, not as good as that sounds. Now, I haven't played high enough to actually get any of these others, but Ranger precision, so you can increase your damage. Starting draw, quick draw, and overdraw. That's basically the delay. Once you put a bead on an opponent, you have to hold the button down and you'll draw the bow back over a period of time. And it looks like these 3 allow you to do that more quickly and probably put in an extra percentage of power by drawing past sort of full. Marksman, critical hit when using the bow, so that's not automatic. You actually have to get marksman skill to get critical hits with the bow. Then we have fire, ice, and poison arrows, pretty typical. Although this distraction arrow sounds a little strange. I haven't ever had one of these, but it actually creates a monster to distract nearby enemies. After 10 seconds, the decoy explodes. Mage, this is actually very interesting, and it doesn't really show on here. You have air, fire, water, earth, necromancy as your skill types. And then, of course, you can increase the capabilities of your spells with various things here, and combat casting, all the pretty standard stuff. There's summoning. Battle Clarity reduces mana use. Sorcery Artisan, max amount of carried cards is 1, next level is 2. And I'll show you what the cards are. So here's all your equipment, just goes into this inventory. And there's a crafting thing. You can dismantle stuff, and it gives you steel, fabric, wood, leather, iron, and with better weapons you actually get gems and that sort of thing. And then you can actually go in and craft. So by using 1 iron, 1 fabric, and 1 leather, I can level up the leather armor that I'm using. And not only does it improve the stats, but I have a gem slot now. And that's what you would expect. And then there's also dye, so you can change the color of this stuff. So now I've improved the quality of that armor, and if I had some gems, I could put them in there and further improve it. So that's pretty nice. And here's these books. This inventory seems to just like get really full really fast. Like all the books don't stack, but these are actually fairly good to read. Tells you how to do alchemy and that sort of thing. And you also can get skill books that when you read them you gain skill points. Ingredients for alchemy. I don't have, this character doesn't have alchemy skills, but it's what you think it is. You combine various alchemy ingredients and it makes potions. And it has a neat recipe. You can record recipes and that sort of thing, so you don't have to memorize them yourself. And so, for example, if I use 2 or more Necrous Bone Marrow in a potion, it will increase the accuracy, my accuracy, by 20% for 1 minute. If I also added a Demon Heart, it would increase the potion strength, and various alchemy ingredients. You can build some fairly complicated potions. It's actually pretty neat, but it works how you would expect it would work. Here's the magic. Excuse me. So what we have here is these things with the weird fancy outlines. They're I can't remember, amulets, magic amulets, yeah. And you can have, I have 2, but you can have more. So right now I can have 2 different spells available to me. And as I buy more amulets, I can have more available spells. But the spells I build myself. And this is actually kind of a neat structure. It's fairly complicated, but you find cards as you go. So magic cards. So I have a Ivy Effect card, which I don't have Earth Mastery at the moment, so I can't use that card. I've found a Fire Effect card, and I've found an Ice Effect card. Now the effect cards are what they say they are. It means your spell will have something to do with ice. And let me just turn off some of these others. So if I just did this, this actually isn't even a valid spell. You have to combine other cards with it. So I have to include a damage modifier. And you can find lots of damage modifiers here. So I use a damage modifier card, and now just the regular, hard to describe, easy to understand once you're doing it, but I have this ice thing. Okay, I want a spell that uses ice, but I need it to do damage, or I need it to do protection, or I need it to have some sort of time effect, and I haven't experimented with this yet, so I haven't found one of these cards, so I don't know precisely what that one does. So I'm going to say I want ice damage, right? So now I've got ice damage. All of a sudden my ice effect does 62 frost damage. And then we have a carrier card, which says it's a homing, if I have a homing card. And I think all I have is missile, yeah. So that says that I want an ice damage missile, but you can also add homing effects to it. You could add a ricochet effect, and you could add spray, which is what it sounds like, a cone of ice, for example. And then you can add multiple effects. And I haven't played far enough to actually get this to work either. But, for example, I could set up a fireball, very similar to what I have here. I've got an ice bolt in this case, but if I had a fireball, I could then add a fire explosion along with that spell. So the fireball would hit the target and then explode and do area damage. And you can really combine some neat things. Or you could have Ivy, I think, is you could have them tie them to the ground and then do fire damage over time while they're stuck to the ground and that sort of thing. It seems quite elaborate and pretty entertaining. So here's one, for example, where I have a fire effect, 31 fire damage, and my area effect is the carrier this time. So instead of a fireball, yeah, this is a fireball. So it shoots out and then explodes and does area damage. And you could combine those two spells to have like an ice spell that exploded and did ice damage in a range and that sort of thing. Really pretty complicated and pretty interesting. I think it's going to be fun to play with this. Anyway, let's head on out. I've used more time. Why is he walking so slowly? Come on. Hello. What's my inventory like? Am I overloaded? I am overloaded. Well, let's get rid of some of my equipment. And I will just dismantle a bunch of stuff here to free up some stuff. Okay, now I should be able to move. There we go, look at that. Speedy. And I'll just head outside and maybe kill a couple of characters using my spells, and maybe I'll switch over to a bow so you can see the bow technique. So here's, if you look to the lower right, you see one of those spheres, pretty typical for this sort of a game. The yellow sphere is stamina, and you can see as I'm running, my stamina sphere is getting used up. Okay, there it's turned red, and I'm just going to slow down now. And you can see it refills fairly quickly. So of course the red sphere is health, the blue sphere is mana. And I'm just going to run around the corner here. You can see graphics really nice. This is actually in the evening, so it's a little dark. And then the mini map, of course, off to the side there. I just happen to know there's a mob at the end of this bridge. So F to equip your current weapon. And I think it's... Oh, I think I turned off auto-targeting. Let's see if I hit him. So there you go. There is auto-targeting by default. Air. And apparently I turned it off, so... And then to loot them, you just click space as you wander past them. And then I think what I'll do is I'll also show you the lockpick if there is a... If this is locked. Yes, it is. So the lockpick is... Come on. There we go. Now what you do here is quite straightforward. And of course with a simple lock like this with just 2 tumblers, it's particularly straightforward. You click the mouse button and the lockpick starts to move around the circle. When it lines up with the gap, you click it again and your lockpick drops into the gap and then proceeds around the circle again and you find the next gap. And so basically click, 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 and there we go. I've opened it. It's that simple. I don't know how it becomes more difficult. Of course, that's a very straightforward lock. So I don't know how they make locks more difficult, aside from more tumblers, I suppose. So, and then the last thing I think I'll show you is let's pop over into using archery. So I'll use that and find a decent quiver. Quivers just seem to add stats, slight stats. And I'm not adding any skills. So again, I think I've got auto-targeting turned off. Draw my weapon, and you see the circle spin around. That's as you draw the bow. You can actually fire before the circle completes, but it doesn't do full damage.
That's rich.
So yeah, like this guy. So I can actually turn and sprint away and then turn and get another shot off, and I missed. So there you go. You saw that I fired that before it was complete and it still did a good amount of damage. And I actually got a bonus skill point for killing some guys, basically. So that's archery. I've done spell casting a little bit, showing you the mechanic there. The weapon mechanic is pretty straightforward. Sneak is just when you're standing still, if you right click the mouse button, he goes into sneak, and you can see he's already drawn his dagger. And when you get close to a mob from behind, you get an icon, and if you left click when you're behind them and they haven't seen you, you do an assassination and it kills the guy. I don't know if it always kills them outright. It always has when I've used it. But that's not as effective as it could be. There's not a lot of opportunity to sneak like that. So you couldn't be a full-out assassin and just walk around sneaking up behind everyone, I don't think. At least not very easily. Anyway, so I think that's good enough for a sort of introduction to the game. And we'll call it a day. So, hi, thank you for watching. I thank you for listening, and I encourage you to leave comments, suggestions, or infantile abuse. I promise I read it all. And if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel or give me the thumbs up. And I guess on the way out, I'll just show you there is a fairly complicated map system, and I'll just zoom out so you get an idea of the size of the map. Might be a little hard to see. There's an island down here about the size of what I'm tracing. There's an island here, and then there's a large region here that I can see, and maybe an island here. Now I don't know if those are actually islands or if it's just the way it's drawn, but that's what it appears to be. This may actually be solid land mass, but from what I can tell, there seems to be just several regions here. Anyway, there you go. That's the game, and we'll see you later. Thanks for hanging around. Cheers.